So I decided to do my third portfolio project on the African savanna ecosystem. What is the African savanna ecosystem? The savanna is mostly made up of grass and some trees, and it has some shrubs. Half of Africa is a savanna, which I found really interesting. There are many grazing animals in the savanna, which I'll talk about later in my PowerPoint. It contains a diversity community of organisms that interact to form a complex food web, which I found really interesting. And the latitude is 15 north and 30 degrees south, which I found interesting while doing my research. Where is the African savanna located? The African savanna covers many parts of Africa, like I said in my previous slide. Some parts it covers it's mostly South Africa. I did find a few other parts it covers, but South Africa is one of them. The South Africa savanna was actually the first ecosystem to be conserved, which I found really cool. And people can go to the Kruger National Park to have a tour of the savanna, and you can go on tours of the savanna there. The Savanna biomass was a huge part of this research project. There's so much information about this Savanna biomass. I could like write this whole PowerPoint on it, but I just picked a few key things. It's an area that has very dry and very wet season, which is a climate. It receives about 59 inches of rain. This happens during the Savanna wet season. And climate plays a huge role in biomass. If the rain or temperature increases, the animals and plants can't survive in the habitat. All the animals depend on each other for food and biomass. If one animal was removed from the whole ecosystem, it would be changed and some animals could die. And the largest part of the savanna biomass is actually in Africa. There's savannas in Australia too. The savanna climate. The African savanna has a wet and dry climate, like I talked about before. The savanna gets all the rain in the summertime. During the time of the wet season, all the plants grow while the animals migrate back to the graze. The savanna, it's usually cooler during the dry season, which you would think it would be cooler during the wet season. The savanna climate has a temperature range of 68 to 86 Fahrenheit. What kind of animals live in the savanna? Here I found a picture of a black rhino, African elephant, and an Arda wolf. There are so many animals in the savanna that I can only list a few. Some of them are black rhinos, African elephants, and an Arda wolf. The Ayada wolf is like a furry hyena and it lives up to 12 years in captivity. And Ayada wolf means earth wolf in the African language, also the Dutch language, which I found out. It's very shy compared to its other animal species in the savanna. They rest at night and are very active like during the day. What kind of plants are in the savanna, the African savanna? Like the animals, there are many different types of plants. They are highly specialized to grow in the environment of the long drought. Some of the plants that I found interesting were in the savanna were the seagull gum, ACA, elephant grass, makatiti tree, the umbrella thorn SCT, and there's just so many more to name. The umbrella thorn is one of the most known trees in the African savanna ecosystem. It grows in sand dune and rocky grounds, can survive high and cold temperatures. And here I plant a little thing and I had a little fact. It can reach up to 115 feet underground. And a second set of roots just underground that can be 2 times the area of the overhead canopy. It's like the animals can cool off here because it's like a little shelter, a little shade. There's a single gum ACA and the elephant grass. Hunting in the savannah, also known as trophy hunting. Sadly, people will go in the African savannah and hunt wild animals to show off as trophy and to mount on their wall. Killing one animal can affect the whole ecosystem and can make animals go extinct if they hunt the rare ones. Cecil is an African lion and is one example. It was a 13-year-old lion and was killed by a dentist from trophy hunting, and it affected the whole ecosystem. Some people classify this as a sport, which it shouldn't be in my opinion because it's hurting the environment and the ecosystem, and it needs to be stopped. The food chain in the savanna ecosystem, the plants are just mainly grass and shrubs with some trees, like I said before. The hoverboards include zebras, giraffe, elephants, warthogs, and more. And there's a hoverboard. The carnivores are leopards, lions, and cheetahs, and more. And there's a carnivore. And I put a picture of a plant. The decomposers include mushrooms, insects, and organisms. And here's a little picture I found of the Savanna food web to explain it more. And there are my sources for my project.